Hey y'all, right now you're seeing kind of almost like a finished product of some of the products of the model that we're working here. I'm just putting this in the beginning and the intro to basically kind of show some of the sources that I'm going through and where you can also get the files. I'm gonna go ahead and open up this last one here. So first off, you'll end up seeing a tutorials file or folder inside of here, which I will link to in the description. Inside of here, there'll be a tutorials file that has the plugin, the zip file. That zip file is actually what you import into Blender. And you will also have the Python file for kind of cleaning up the animation files as you go through them. On top of that, I'll also provide links to basically the model importer groundwork. This is when Turtlety basically added the model importing function, and this is where you can kind of see how I got the geo main from and why it's in the folder models folder too. If you're trying to make an accessory, a monster, an NPC, a sub are like the sub characters, a weapon, any of those things, this is how they need to be named as. You'll see the familiarity. Sorry, I cannot speak today. On top of that, you can see where you place the FFIX file. So this is kind of explains on how it all works, as well as what I was showing you in the video. So I'll make sure I link to this. There's the model viewer in the general Albiorus Memorial Wiki. When you go in here, it'll tell you actually how to use the model viewer. This hasn't been fully updated yet with all the other features yet of shifting between weapons and everything like that. And then the quality of life that DV actually added that allowed us for like doing other kind of crazy things within model viewer. So you can do a lot of that. And that kind of explains on how to use that further down all through here. So just kind of showcasing what that can be. Eventually there'll be another commit coming in that allows you to actually adjust keyframes in case you wanted to actually adjust that as well. So I just wanted to make sure I put that in the beginning, and I'll be continue on with the video after. Hello everyone, my name is Warped Edge. I am one of the modders in the Final Fantasy IX community. Creating a video here today to create a tutorial on importing character models into Final Fantasy IX. This is going to be for like custom characters. I'm working on a custom character pack, and that's what I'll be basically basing this tutorial off of. Everything will be in the description below. I'll be providing the same files and also my plugin for Blender, so that whenever people are following this tutorial, they can just make sure that they use the exact same files I used to be able to see if they can do it themselves, in case using their own model they run into issues and they just don't even know if they did it right to begin with. So that'll give you some understanding. So this is going to be a little bit of an in-depth tutorial. I'll make sure there's chapters in there, and whenever I go to each chapter, you may be able to brief cuts. You may also hear little keyboard presses, and I'm sorry, I'll try to get that removed post-credits if you don't hear it. I did that. Also at the bottom left, you can see where I'm pressing different keys. That it'll be just so it helps with any type of shortcuts I'm using within the programs, whether it be Memoria's model viewer or within Blender itself. Now, whenever you see this key right here, this is a minus sign, a hyphen. So if you see this, like, you know, that's -1. Like, that's what I'm trying to do. It doesn't. I know it looks like a little underscore, but hopefully that'll help. I'll also try to make sure to say the shortcuts I'm doing out loud, just to double reaffirm that people know what I'm doing and how I'm switching between things so quickly. Without that, let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so what we're going to start with is the unchanged model first. And as you can see here in my video demo folder, I already have the FFIX for the model and its images for it. I'm going to be using the 0.dds file because that has his actual face. The other one's for blinking and another version of it. So that's the one I'm going to be using. So just drag that into Blender. We're going to import that. Now this model has been imported, and just like I was to say, we're going to go through every step of every file. You can see the bones that he has. You can see the model, his mesh here, and what mode you're in, object mode and stuff. We'll kind of go through. I'll go through a little bit of that bit by bit, but what we're going to do first is this is going to be called the unchanged. So when you go to save a file inside the video demo where I'm having it, I recommend doing something similar to this. I'm going to name this 0 cloud unchanged. So save this as a Blender file. There you go. So this is just like a good stop point for you to go to whenever you feel like you made a mess up on a future file. You want to just start back over, you know, you just have it. Each step that we go through and we create new files, it's like if you made a big mistake, you can at least go back and start from a certain point. So first thing is first is the material properties. When you click on the mesh of the character here, and you see you're in object mode, you should see this little ball here, the material properties. There's a base, and there sometimes is an alpha. So if this is just a meter like this, the metallic is, then that's fine. You could always technically delete the alpha, but we're gonna just kind of keep it here. I'm not really too sure of what this does, no matter how much I try to figure it out and understand it. I guess I'm not smart enough for that. However, so what we're gonna do is we're going to be changing the format, the .dds, to a PNG. And first thing is, click up here at the top left, go to the image editor. When you select the diffuse texture here, see the texture, press N. And then when you go to image, you should see right here the /0.dds. The // means basically local directory. So it'll look for that file inside the same directory where the model is. This is what we kind of want to keep, because if you make it as the absolute path and others try to use your mod or something changes, it just won't load and cause errors. But of course, right now, I believe Memory only uses PNG format. I'm not entirely sure, but what we're going to do is throw this into a converter. So also, actually, whenever you change it here to /PNG, you'll see that it disappears when I press enter after typing that in. That's because it doesn't exist. It doesn't see it. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this 0.dds file, put it into this DDS to PNG converter, just type that in Google, and then convert. Once it converts, go ahead and get the same path. All right, it's done. Go ahead and download it. It's already in the right location. Save. Okay, and then move this back over. So now you see that the 0.png is over here. Now if I just click the reload to check again, it sees it. And same with the diffuse texture 1, 00.1, that alpha one. Just gonna do the same thing and change it to PNG and press enter. And there we go, we got that changed. So back to the 3D viewport. It's this. Also, whenever you're moving it around, you can hold down the middle mouse button to move. I'm pretty sure there might be other keys for that too, but I typically use the middle mouse button. And what we're going to change now is we're going to add a new collection. This is going to be called the base collection. And I'll explain more about what that is afterwards. So we're going to basically grab this and drag into the base collection. Same with the mesh. It's all in the same collection here. We're going to name this base skeleton and base armature. This is just for posterity to understand what we're working with. Now, if you've looked at bone hierarchy before within Final Fantasy IX, you'll notice that they usually go with a bone hierarchy starting with the root bone, bone 000, then bone 001, and then it goes through and it has its different paths up to the arm, the legs, and everything here. And as you see here, the root bone is actually this one right here, and that's what it says is bone 01 or bone 1. If you click on the bones right here, armature, and you go down to data, when you've already uploaded the plugin for it, which you can go through and edit preferences, add-ons here, and install from disk. Once you get it from my source files I will provide, you'll be able to add that in, and all you got to do is press rename bones. This also works with the ones with the animations, at least from what I've tested, because this model already comes with its animations. And now if I go back and look at the bones, there they are. They're renamed like they're supposed to. Now, you'll start off with this timeline editor right here at the bottom. You can see the little animation right here. I'm going to change this to dope sheet and dope sheet to action editor. The reason I'm doing this and showing you is that this model I got luckily didn't have one long string of animations. It was already separated for me by somebody. Thank you, Chicolad, for that. And whenever I go into each animation here, you can see the keys here. Now, sometimes they'll have a slot assigned to them, so they won't actually play until you click on the slot themselves. Also, you can click on this little clock here to restrict the time so it loops properly. So you can see how he's moving here. So you can go ahead and go into the bone frame and go to the very beginning one, 0, see how it's not doing anything, click on the slot, and there you go. Now, a couple things to, if you are working with ones that have custom animations already in there, or not custom, but existing animations with them, and you want to use them, I do recommend, especially if they have lots of keyframes, change the frame rate to 60. And it may look fast, but whenever you import it into the actual game, you can of course change this whenever you need to, but when you run the export animation here in the end, you want to make sure that this is higher so that you can easily change it after the fact in the anim files, which I will go through as well. But for now, I'll keep it at 30 just to not make the loop too fast. So another thing is, if you notice the animation, sometimes the animation name could be confusing. Like, I can't really read this. This is a lot of stuff. So another one here, rename all actions. So you can make it animation by prefix, and then what it'll do, it'll add a 000, 00, or 001, 002 at the end of each one of them. But since I already know what I'm going to name his, just like his model was GeoMain Cloud 0, it's going to be onName Cloud 0, which is how the game interprets usually the animation files, is just you changing that geo to on animation. And then I'm gonna put another underscore because typically this is where the BTL or other parts of the animation name come from. But for now, just leave it as that. And then when I hit rename all actions, you'll see now they've been all named to a list. A lot easier to read through. And then once you, of course, you figure out what animation you want that for, like for example, this being his battle idle and stuff like that, you could change it to battle idle as an example to make it easier for you in the end, because once you export it, it exports with that name. So we'll pause that there, go back to the beginning frame. And so right now we have the name of everything in here, the base collection set up. Now what we're gonna do is go back to file. Well, actually change this back to object mode. Always good to just kind of stay in a mode that you want it to come back in, save as. And this time it's gonna be number 1, cloud modified. So this one has the modified PNGs, it has the adjusted names of the bones and everything. So this is where another base will start off at, and then we'll continue from the next step there. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to try and see what the model itself is like in game before we start making any modifications, because that's what you kind of need to understand first. So the very first thing is, inside of object mode, we are going to get the model to go into its rest position. So underneath the data, rest position. And what matters about this is you see how it's actually on the world plane. This is the ground. Pose position isn't. So you can see that we need to click on the armature, Control Tab, highlight everything on the bones with pressing A, and then you're going to use Alt G and then Alt R. And then what that does is basically Alt G resets the movement, Alt R does all the rotations. So now it's back in just like its rest position. Now, of course, animations will break when you try to play, or like go back to normal whenever you play it. So this is going to be making the model only look. So what that means is we're going to have to get rid of the animations for this next section. That's why we had the cloud modified section. So when you go up to here, display mode, we're going to go into Blender file. You're going to see all the actions here. Make sure you have all the actions deleted. Okay, so now there's nothing to play, nothing to get in the way of that model, about where it's basically at. Okay, so now that we have that, the very first thing we want to see is what does the model look like in game. So if you use Control E, or you actually may not have that set up. So go back into object mode with Control Tab. We just click up here. I'll just go through the menu here. I mean, you can make it a shortcut by right-clicking and change shortcut. So right now I have it set to Control E. So if I go to Control E, you see the model here being exported. So you can create a preset whenever you do set things up. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set the very basic one first to see what it looks like. Under armature, make sure you have add leaf bones unchecked so it doesn't try to add additional bones when you re-import it. And the number I told you I was going to change it to, which was 11,000, that is what we're going to leave it to, 11,000. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and export it just like it is. And if we go into here, we're going to grab both the 11,000 FFIX that we just exported, and the 0 PNG. We're going to copy those. And we're going to go into the models folder, because remember I'm using main. Again, I'll make sure I put in the description about when to choose geo main, geo sub. Like it's based off what you want to do. Paste these in here. Okay, this is what you'll see whenever the model goes in. Now it goes back to the dictionary patch. So we go back into here, the dictionary patch. The character's default name, how they will show up in game, because even though you set it, it will set it in Hades Workshop in the future. We're going to, it won't actually go out and actually output, so we're going to have to set it in here, and then we'll, of course, different languages, but this is just for testing. The model, so 3D model, 11,000, that's the FFIX file, has to be a number, and then geomain cloud is 0 is what it be represented as. So that's that name that I showed you about in the folder as well, will come in handy in later. The 3D model animation is just, I use this 555, it's not used by anything. You got to make it a nice range that's not being used by other mods or anything like that. No mods are really using this range when you go into the animations. So you give it a name of the file of the animation that you're going to make, and also the animation name of that number. Now this isn't going to actually show anything right now because we haven't created an animation. So what we're going to do is just leave it like that for now, but at least it has the model. See what that looks like first. The whole point is to go through these together and see any issues I run into and how I resolve them. As this loads up. There it goes. All right, and then we go into advanced and then the model viewer. Just to show real quick, back here, press N, move that V there. Okay, so usually you'd start off in the model viewer on Zidane. You hold shift and then you hit the right arrow, you'll skip sections, you see at the top there changing, until you get to custom FFIX. Now, this is what it typically would look like right here. You see he's upside down and not really facing the right way. Also shift C shows the floor, so this is a good way of knowing whenever a character is facing the right orientation. As you can tell, he is not facing the right orientation. On top of that, if you look at his right hand here, it has the gauntlet. But it's actually his left hand here in Blender. You actually click on the bones and go into data. You can go into viewport display and change it to names. You can see the bone names here. Bone 7 is the one that has the gauntlet. Bone 7 has the gauntlet, but it's on the other arm. So what happens is that basically sometimes models will get inverted. So a good way to actually get that fixed is to first off, we're gonna do it bit by bit. And luckily when the model viewer is active, you can actually change. You can press R here to reset everything. You see how small it is comparatively as well. But we're gonna do, before we touch scale, we're gonna do rotation. So if it's inverted like that, the first thing you need to do is something called S-1. When you click on the entire model, you see how that everything's highlighted, so you click A, highlight everything. S is for scale, -1 reverts it, or inverts it. Now it may look upside down to you, but that's fine. If we export this exact same model again, like it is, which export it here, because you gotta grab it from the one that goes to the file first, because it looks for the PNG. If you export it straight to it, it may not always work. And then we're gonna go back and place this one. And as I said, you can live edit. All you gotta do is click to a different model and go back to it. All right, and now it's facing the right position, but you may notice that it is inverted this way too. So this is because of, when it inverts it, it also inverts the, something called normals. That's why you kind of see him almost like flipped. So when he's flipped like this, that definitely causes, of course, issues. And what we're going to do here is we're going to fix that. So when you click on the mesh, you're going to keep this upside down because, of course, this is just going to be for the model view only. Press tab when you click only on the mesh. You're going to go to mesh, normals, flip. Okay, and now press tab to get back out of it. We're going to export the model again. We're going to go ahead and grab this one again, paste it, overwrite it. Now when I click off of it and I scroll in, Now you see it's working correctly. Also, when we inverted it, you can see the gauntlets on the right hands, right bone, everything. So everything here has been working so far. So, but now it's the scale. So now if I press C, you can see how tiny he is comparatively. If we go back to any regular model like Zidane, you can see how tall he is. So whenever how I do this is I look for a model that kind of is the size that I want the character to be. So Steiner is got a good, almost a good like adjustment for it. So I see how big he is. He goes up to, whenever I'm at this angle specifically, using the mouse to click and drag and move around. He's on the, this has like on the third stair. Now I've already done the calculation on this. You may have to do it little bits at a time. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on his model first, not his bones, because this actually will screw up with how the weapon placement goes. It'll make the weapon super large if you do the bones as well in a specific way. So we're going to hit scale, and then I know mine is 3.6. So you can see it at the top left there where it typed in the number. You can also change this by pressing negative or like the hyphen, but this is how we need it right now. So, and then you can sort of see the bones itself in object mode. They're not following with him. If you just try to scale the same thing, you know, or you have to do it in edit mode, sorry. So you press tab, click on it, highlight all, A, and then scale. If you try to do the same thing, you notice that it's not centered. To fix this, temporarily change this part, because this is like the little cursor, that little ring with red and white. I'm gonna go ahead and change that to the 3D cursor, because that's what it is. Now if we scale it again, it scales where its root's at. So that's how we need it. And then we have to do this in edit mode because it doesn't actually scale the model itself, like the armature bones, which again, it's the only difficult part that I had to figure out for a while, but we'll leave it at. Okay, and then make sure you change this back just so it was medium point. All right. And then we're gonna re-export again. Go into the model. Oh, wrong one. Copy this one. Paste it now over right. And like I said, just go to any model. Well, I've already off it, so now when I go back to it. Okay, now he looks like the appropriate size. Good. And there's going to be another thing. Whenever you press B, you can see the bones. Press P, you can see the weapon right there. Starts at the bone 0. You can shift and scroll. It'll go to his different bones indicated here. And you can see when I go to bone 7, it looks like it's on his hand correctly, but it's actually positioned wrong. If you hold Control and scroll, go to a sword, because this is what typically he holds, you can see that it's not really facing proper. If you were to go to a different model, like Zidane's, and put a weapon in his hand, you can see how the weapon kind of goes with the hand itself. Actually, it makes sense, even though his A pose is a little bit awkward. So, back to him. So what we're going to do is now we're going to change the bone orientation. You can hold the middle click, flip, just so you can get a better view here. And then on these bones, because this is the bones that was wrong, you may have to play around with this one, rotating it. Click on the bone itself. Now, its position is correct, it's just rotation's wrong. So I made sure you put the numpad slash here. You can see right here, it'll focus on that. If you press it again, it unfocuses. But this part, you don't want to rotate the entire thing unless you have to move other pieces. This part is more Blender specific, so you Google figure out a little bit more on that. But what I need to do is I need to rotate this, what I found out, 45 degrees. So if I rotate with R, and then, nope, it's negative. So negative 45, or to negative 90. I think it was negative 90. So we're gonna go with negative 90, where it rotates it downwards, because it keeps the root of the weapon, which I think is at the tailbone here. And this part is where it's just rotating the actual object. Same with this one, but this one's on the other hand, so it's going to be not negative 90, but positive 90. Press enter. All right, now we can unpad it again. We can reorientate this back to where we knew it was upside down, even though it doesn't matter how you view it, just good to understand. You can see the correct view that we're at right now. Z is up instead of Z is down. So we're going to export again. And we are going to go ahead and this one again, paste it. Okay, now we go off the model, back into the model. Go ahead and put the weapon in there, and Oh, looks like I actually rotated it the wrong way. It's okay. You can use Control Z to undo. Make sure that you go into your preferences. I don't remember exactly where it was at specifically. In here, there is a section here to increase your undo amounts. Make sure you create it to the maximum. I do not remember where it is exactly at. You can Google that as well, but you want to undo it. And actually, I'm going to do it the opposite way this time. So rotate 90 degrees inwards, and then this is actually negative 90 degrees. And same thing. Gonna go ahead and export it. Grab the right one. Paste it. Right. And then go back into the model again. And there you go. Now the weapon is facing the correct direction on both hands. It's always good to do both hands just because in case you ever have future plans or you want to do something specific with it. So this will be considered the model view ready one. So what we're going to do is go to File. Well, yes, it's going to look us upside down because we want to export it just as it is. So save as to. This is going to be called model only. And then we're going to save that. All right. And the next step we're going to do next is going to basically get a custom animation like the A pose, like you see here where it's T pose. Right now it doesn't actually exist, even though it says it does here, but it's not actually existing because it's going to do something weird when it comes to exporting, like inverting the normals. The animation model and the other model, and this like static model where it's paused, have two different ones. So I'll go ahead and cover that now. All right, so the next step is now we're going to show like a basic A pose animation. A pose is what you normally see as T pose, but as you can see, the arms are a little more arched, which is like default static pose that he's going to have that shows up as an animation file. So how we're going to do this is back in your model only file, we're going to go back into object mode. And we are going to take everything and just revert it again as -1. So it's back to its normal view. Now you can do it the upside down inverted way, but of course that's going to be a little bit more confusing due to the arms being on the opposite side and you needing to know the reverse create animations in like the opposite sides. So for this one, we're going to call this custom animations. Just get it already saved as another file. So, custom animations. So anytime you want to create custom animations that are not part of the ones that you have imported, if you do have imported ones, it's good to have just a separate one where you can create your custom animations to be added. So, with that being said, this is going to be pretty simple. On your little timesheet here, just make sure you're at frame 1. It's very simple to just to make an A pose. It's already in that pose to begin with. If your model isn't, you can always switch to pose mode, which Control Tab after you click on the armature, click on any of the bones. You can rotate by your R or RX for certain axis, Y, Z, that kind of stuff. You want to rotate multiple bones, shift click, that kind of stuff. However, what we're going to do is just a simple A pose. So how we're going to do that is we're going to start by clicking under make sure you're still under Action Editor. We're going to go ahead and click New. And in this action, we're just going to name it like we did earlier. I still named it T pose because that's just how I'm more familiar with it. And or battle T pose. Okay, so with that being said there, like I said, it's only going to be one frame. So how you can do this is first off, highlight all the bones. So A, to highlight them all, make sure you're in pose mode. On pose, you can see animation. Insert keyframe king set. This is a menu option, so mine's I and K. So yours might be different, just make sure you check. So, but all we have to do is just insert a frame I. You see the frame right here that's been created. That's it. Now you have your A pose. Now, when it comes to my plugin here, what we're gonna have to do is with this, when that's now standing up correctly, we have to make sure we apply negative root scale because it's not upside down. It's back in its regular one, which means when it gets imported into 9, it'll flip it again and not work. So make sure you go ahead and apply that. And then all you need to do is make sure you click export selected animation. So I have it where it goes to the downloads folder, no matter what, for either OS. So go ahead and find it, repos. And then I'm going to go into his animations folder here, 11,000, paste that. And now, even though I needed this because it needs numbers and I use 555, I'm going to use that. Now, animations unfortunately do not load statically. I know you won't really see an animation for an A pose because it's static and it looks like it's already there. That's just because it's also his default rest pose. But animations have to be loaded each time the game launches. It's not like the model where you can just cycle between the two and the animations will update. Unless you're updating the exact same file itself, not overwriting it with a new file, the same kind. So when I go back to the model viewer, just to make sure it actually shows up correctly. Remember, this button right here means it's playing. Press N here, the menu, right? All right. Play, if you go to pause through, of course you don't see any difference because it's the same one, but it's also not inverted, so it's great. This one has nothing right now, up and down. Okay, but that's how you do like custom animation. I can try to do just a test one just to show you what it looks like when it actually does move. So this animation right here, if I increase the animation one more to 2, and I just say arm goes, we're just gonna say goes down. And then I'm gonna key, I'm gonna highlight all that, and I'm gonna key that frame as well. So it looks like this. I'm gonna go ahead and export selected animation. Okay. And just to show you here, now it's the new one here. Oops, wrong section. I'm gonna overwrite it. And as you see, even if I go to a different model and play it, nothing happens. Leave it on pause, and go ahead and close the game. You notice a little bit of a long piece and stretch, just going back and forth, but just to show how it works before you move to the actual section of the animations, or ones that are already imported. But this, once you kind of figured this part out, if you are creating custom animations, and technically once you start creating these animations, this is it. You're kind of done, and you can see the animation moving now. So that's how you know it works. So I'm going to go ahead and reclose this out again. I'm going to go back to its old frame, re-export it again just so I have it. I will also be providing a script as well, because the way this file gets created, it doesn't look the cleanest. It may look clean actually, but it doesn't load the cleanest. Whenever you look at other anim files, they're actually supposed to be a lot more kind of smashed together, just so the game loads them faster. But I'll be providing that script later, and you can just run it against the file. So let's go ahead and close that back up again. And I'm going to move this file over and replace it again. I'm also going to go ahead and go into that file, go into his geomain, and paste the T-pose here. The next section that we're going to cover before I get into going back into importing the existing animations is just creating the model in Hades Workshop and then showing it in game with every animation just being T-pose. So that's what I'm going to cover next. Okay, so first things first is going to go ahead and open up Hades Workshop. Mine may look slightly different whenever I'm going through menus for the directories, just because I'm on Linux having to use Proton, but same kind of menu options. So I'm going to go ahead and open up through the game, go to the Final Fantasy directory, and make sure you launch through the launcher, creating the mod. So I'm just going to show up in a base vanilla. So if you remember in that dictionary patch right here, I have 31. That's what I was setting it to just for the test. Of course, I don't know the limit yet, but you're still testing on the limit of the IDs. The playable character pack, of course, using a lot of them up to 20 something. I can't remember off the top of my head, even though I'm the one that made it, made those changes. But I'm just going to use 31 as a test. So I'm going to use Steiner just because as an option for him, he is going to be the same height-ish kind of. So 31. Change this one part to cloud. I know there's more parts in here, but we're not going to cover all of that yet. Okay, and like, of course, this is the weird thing where you just saw me not seeing the numbers. That's just, again, the Linux thing. You'll see everything just fine. Very first thing I like to go and do is make sure that I have two specific commands, especially for animation testing. This is just to be, of course, changed afterwards. You just want to get it in there. Is I like to use sword art, and I like to use white magic so that I can see the sword art has a bunch of regular attack abilities, but also uses special cast, which is an animation, kind of like whenever Zidane steals or Armorant throws. So whenever you create a special animation, it doesn't mean it'll be used. You may not even use a special animation, but I just like so I can feel it out and figure out what looks the best. White magic, of course, I'm using that just because it allows me to see how characters can basically cast with their casting animation, and then also be able to see when they get healed and how they get back up recovery wise, or just how they basically transition from weak to casting, that kind of stuff. So I just use these for the best of those. And then trans commands can be the exact same if you're trying to test the trans colors. So sword art, and then maybe even black magic just to get attacking magic, just to see what that looks like. And then weapons, since he's going to be using swords, just going to put a broadsword on. Then same thing, bronze helmet, so he doesn't just get decimated by the normal monsters in Evil Forest, because that's just my main testing ground. That's where my save is. And then now this is the big part, change advanced parameters. So in here you see where it's using battle signer and trance signer. Just remember that geomain. This is where the now 0 Now you notice it doesn't actually change, but of course, whenever you change these animations, anything you make changes to, once you hit OK, you go back into it. Now it may say Terran Elevator, but that's just because it doesn't know how to pick up the new models, so that's fine. Chance colors, you can go through an RGB website and figure out the RGB hex colors for these to change to whatever color you'd like. Male, Gaian, technically he's not either, but well, technically I guess can be Gaian, but this is only 4-letter character limit, so unfortunately he is Claude. And I'm just gonna put random things. This is gonna make it, he's just gonna be blank because I don't have a UI sprite set up for it. That's completely separate, and you can find that elsewise. That attack sequence I mentioned in the intro, or towards the beginning, 12,001 is the Beatrix one I made. And then his weapon bone. So again, we see his weapon bone. We want his weapon in his right hand, so bone 11. So bone 11. And then the status icon, this is the bone for all of them. And it's always on the 1 when it comes to this one. I don't know what specific status is that for, but these are all like Steiner's head. But for us, we're going to use 3 because that's his. Okay. And I still don't know much to do with these yet, so I've got to figure out. There's a shading issue, and I don't know if anything like here adjusts those. Now, this is where it comes to that T-pose animation, so we're going to go ahead and grab that. And it's tab, paste. Gonna place all these. All right, the reason why we do this is just so that it sees every animation as the same, and then with the newest update in Memoria, it doesn't get bugged anymore. Where if you had the same exact animation, it would error out. You needed different animations. Okay, and that's all we need on this part. So now we can go and save the mod. I'm gonna save it into, I have my own location, those things. Mod. Okay. And then in that same location where I have the demonstration mod here, just gonna put it right in here inside the demonstration mod. And it will fill out the other pieces. Okay. Now with that being said, now you should see inside of, oops. Let me just go back into here. The streaming assets now are being populated with data. The characters, this special effect is still here, which is the Beatrix one, which again just looks like the Beatrix one I stole. That's all I used, because if I have to make adjustments or anything like that, he's not locked to Beatrix's and I'm not editing hers. Okay, and now to actually test. Just to see how he appears in game. Of course, you have to make sure you have your memoria.ini has all characters enabled by default. So I don't believe that is in here. No. So you're gonna have to go into memoria.ini, or you can always inside your mod create a file inside of it so that you're not adjusting the actual one. So if you want players to be able to add these party members at any time, be able to use them, you have to make sure you're, where is it at? All characters available. You have to make sure it is enabled. You can create this as your own mod. If you look in playable character pack, you'll see what I mean by that. It has its own memoria.ini because what it does is it overwrites the default. Okay, so that being said, go ahead and click play. I'm gonna load a save file here that has right after the evil plant brain, or not evil plant brain, sorry, the boss fight unlocking trance, so soul cage. So I'd like to keep one character in at all times, along with the character. You won't see him because he has no picture, but loud. Just so that I can see interactions between how he heals or does things to the ally and vice versa. And then just F1 to speed, just get to battle. And there he is. You can see how he's in there, color and all. And actually, not actually having any issues with the shading. That's actually new. But of course, that little yellow diamond, that's an issue that's still trying to be figured out on how to adjust, and maybe in a later Memoria update to allow for adjusting that. So unfortunately, it's not going to be like that above. And of course, no matter what animation I do, you know, it's going to be a T-pose animation, but yeah, there it is. All right, and then you can go ahead and close out of that because now we've tested that it works. The character's in game. And that's when you start adding the other animations. So we'll cover that in the next section. Okay, so for now for this part, as you can see, I actually went back into, I opened up the old file, the cloud modified. That actually had all the animations. I also went through and renamed quite a few of them, not all of them, but quite through them just to me to show for demonstrations. So this one's going to become the new file here called, we'll just call it the animation, we'll do existing animations because this is for the model that has existing animations already attached to it. So we don't want to edit the modified one because we're still going to be adjusting with it. Now, what we're going to be doing here is now we're going to go to this base collection. You can hit F2 or you just double click on it. We're going to call it the animations collection. Animation skeleton and animation armature. Okay. The reason for this is that we're going to save. All right. And now we're going to go ahead and Control O, open up. We're going to go back to the model only. Now, this one's going to become a new one called animation. We're going to go ahead and call this one basically bone constraints, because that's what we're basically going to be doing. We're going to be doing this for a bone constraints model for the animation, because this, again, this is only for existing. You're only creating custom animations, and if your animations are off-centered. If they're off-centered, then you have to basically do this next step. But if your model has animation, all the animations are on the same plane, then you won't have to do that. You'll just have to use the root export animation on it, just like the others, whilst only scaling that. So what we're gonna have to do here is, now that we've gone ahead and saved that as a bone constraint, we're gonna go into File. Oops, I have to be in Object Mode. Control Tab, Object Mode, File. Actually, before we do that too, we're gonna have to change this model around because this is not gonna be the exported model. This is gonna be the animation one. That's -1 on the scaling. Revert it back to normal. Now we're gonna go into File, Append, and we're gonna go into the existing animations one. And we're gonna go into Collection and Animation Collection. Whoops, I was inside the base collection, so now it's in there. Let me take that out. There you go. Actually put it, oh, there you go. So shift click to uncollapse all of them. You can do that real quickly. All right, so we have our base skeleton, our animation skeleton. If you remember, like this one is the one that has not been scaled because this is from the modified one, but not the full scaling done to it yet. So can't, of course, just scale it all willy-nilly. So what we're gonna have to do here is you can actually hide temporarily the base or the base collection itself. So now you can see this one. And what we're going to do here is a little different. Okay, so you're going to go ahead inside the animation collection, the mesh itself, we're going to go ahead and delete that. We don't need it for this particular set because this is just the animation skeleton that we're going to be copying from. You're going to click on the object itself and then scale it to the exact same as you did for the regular model only, which was for this one 3.6. So back to this size. So now if I go back and undo the other collection, you can see how it's up here comparatively with the model right here. So now what we need to do is, we're not going to apply the scaling or anything because again, once we do that, it kind of messes up with everything. So instead, what we're going to create is called an empty. So in the viewport here, and you can be underneath this animation collection, Shift A, create an empty, we call it cube. And you can press S to scale it and just move your mouse a little bit, scale it down a little bit. Okay. And we're going to call this the animation empty. And that's going to make sure it's inside this collection. I'm going to click on the animation collection and then control click on the, animation empty, and then control click on the animation skeleton. And then over the viewport, you have your mouse over here, control P, and then object, oh, I got it backwards, undo. So we're going to click on the animation skeleton first, make sure it's highlighted this way, not the darker orange, light orange. Then control click on animation empty where it turns dark orange. Control P over here and parent it. Now you can see that it is underneath this empty. Now these empties basically allow us to do things to the model without affecting it. And for that, we should be able to now move the model down. So instead of moving the actual skeleton where the animation would just pop it back up again, you move the empty down, which is the parent of it. So you can press G, and then actually before you even do that, press 1 on your numpad. And then we're going to go ahead and also hide the base model and the skeleton. Okay, so we're just going to hide that for right now. And then when you're on this animation empty, when you use G and then Z for down and go on the Z axis, you can move it up and down. Now I do recommend zooming in first, so you want to get it as perfect as possible to here. So we're going to go in G, C, scroll, bring it down until basically get here. And the best place to know is you can redo the base skeleton here and try to line them up. So you can just keep pressing G, Z, moving it. You notice it's a little off center. You can G, X, or X axis. Basically, you want it to be as much as possible. There we go. All right, it has been moved down. And of course, as you see, if I click on the animations here, you can also see back in the Blender file, because remember we were on, this file was just the model only at first. You import the collection, it does not import the animations except the first one. So we're just going to go ahead and delete that. And we're going to go back into view layer. We're going to append, again, go back up one, actions, and just highlight all of them. You can press A to highlight them all, and append. Now you should see inside of here all the animations. So now you see if I go back and click on the animation skeleton, I can choose the idle, for example, and it got shrunk. Okay, 1 second here. Oh, that's just because we played the animation here first. I forgot. So for every single animation as well, so if I undo and go back to here, for every single animation that you have to do, you'll have to do this unfortunately for one long keyframe, but you have to also go into, I'm gonna use idle 2 because I found that one have less keyframes. As you saw those dark notes, scroll in here, see that there's 1 keyframe here and there's 2 keyframes here. Now I noticed that whenever I delete this frame, I don't see much of a difference. So if I was actually go back into the animation skeleton, play the animation, you know, if I delete this one by pressing X, make sure it's highlighted, that one's glowing, X, delete frames, I don't see any difference. Okay, so what you do is go back to 1, scale it back to 3.6, and while you're over the first keyframe, you want to press K or whatever your menu one was from the pose, and you want to key the scale only. Now, of course, this is going to make it look like it's doing this as it's starting to go through the animation. So what you do is you go to the end frame, the very last frame here. Just in the up arrow can go to the last frame, and what you can do is scale it again. They only do this on the first and last frame. You just gotta make sure it's the very last, but if it has like a bunch of mini frames in between for the scaling right before, you may have to delete one of the prior ones. But now scale again. All right, and now if I play it, there it is. Now it's back into the normal size. Good, what we want. So this is the first animation we're going to use. The next part is now to set the bone constraints. So how that works is based off how I named these collections. And then set the bone constraints. This -1 is only meant if you're creating a dummy bone, but if you're not, don't know what that is, don't worry about it. It's only for certain things that cause the root bone to move with it, but may not need to do that. So now we're going to go ahead and do the bone constraints. Okay, so as you basically have all unhidden, you make sure you select the armature of the base skeleton. And this whole bone constraints, what it's supposed to do is now that it's lined up properly, it's going to take these bones, and the constraints mean that it's going to basically mimic the motions of this model, even though it's a different mode model, because whenever you import the model, again, you can't scale it the same way. It just doesn't work, especially because of the fact that this one was off-centered. So what we're going to go ahead and do is just click on that armature, hit the button right here, set bone constraints, and there you go. You can't see the other bones because they're basically in lockstep. And now if I play the animation, when I go to base skeleton, I go to idle 2. Oops, wrong one. I think I still have to click the animation skeleton, sorry. So go in here. Now you see the entire mesh. Don't click on the base skeleton for that animation skeleton. All right, and there is how you do the bone constraints. Now as you see it mimicking the animations. The last part will be basically baking those animations into the base skeleton. And that will allow you to actually utilize them in the base skeleton without it looking smashed. So we'll do that next. All right, so now for this very last part is just getting the animation to be basically baked into allow the base skeleton to do it. Because remember, the constraints or whatever the bones are doing for the animation skeleton, it's basically puppeteering the base skeleton. So we want to make sure that now we can get it to actually bake that into this animation. Now you have to do this again, these steps between every animation do the scaling of the first frame and the last frame, and then the same thing when it comes to when it comes to baking it in, you just repeat these steps of clicking the animation scale MT and basically going for the base skeleton. So with that more into actually what it looks like is that on the animation skeleton, you want to make sure, animation skeleton, you want to make sure you're selected on the animation you want. I should have named these all unfinished on main battle, what it is, so that whenever I am finished, I bake it with its new name, it just has the correct one, but you can know that for the future is name them all unfinished. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the base skeleton now. I'm going to click X on that because it's whatever the animation skeleton's on right now. We're going to click new. And with that new one, since I can't name it the same exact one, I'm just going to name it as Battle Idle Finished. Okay, and now remember why you're only selected on this one, you're going to hit Control Tab over in the viewport, or in pose mode, A to highlight them all. And then you're going to go into Pose, Animation, Make Action. And here you want to select everything here. And do not select these two. And this will select each of the end frame and keyframe and start frame for each one, so it'll go from beginning to end. And then once I click and it's also going to go and bake it into this new created one. When I click OK, you can see now all the little keyframes it has. And as I'm moving this over the time frame, you can see it moving. And then make sure everything's working just fine. We're going to go ahead and make sure that I click here, highlight. You can see highlighting on the bones. And just press space to play it. Yep, and it looks smooth, no choppiness, nothing. Everything looks good. So now that everything is good here, we're going to go ahead and remember this is standing up, so it's going to reverse it. So you have to apply that negative root scale. Export selected animation. We're going to go ahead and, oh, actually, before we export that, I'm just going to overwrite it again. Change this to 60 FPS. Because again, it's like basically showing its default, and the reason being is that you're going to see in a moment. We're going to go back here, re-export it again. I'm going to go ahead and save these bone constraints files so it's updated. And here's the finished one. Now, of course, we can just change it back to battle idle. We're going to go into here where it'll be used in a moment later. And then 5, 5, 5, 5, 6. And as you remember here, I have the battle idle set to 5, 5, 5, 5, 6. So now let's see, what does that look like in here? I'll also show how to use my animation converter to make it run better and not take up too much of the resources of the game. It's just better to have everything as optimized as possible, but you can kind of see the preview up here. Okay, so we're on animation 1, go up one arrow, and there it is. So you can see this means he is bobbing. It's not what I wanted. I'm not sure actually why it's because of the dummy bone. And this is the part I was talking about with the dummy bone. So to fix that, if your model is doing this even with the dummy bone, we're going to have to basically kind of redo some of the constraints. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out and show this is one of the issues I was talking about we would run into. I guess it's good to cover it in the video and show. So the reason why that is bobbing is because of the fact that whenever the model is moving in this animation, you see how it's moving this root bone. Well, Final Fantasy IX does how it uses root bone is the entire model. So instead of looking like it's like this, instead it is moving the entire model up and down as the legs are moving as well, making it look, well, not like you want. So what you may have to do here is create a -1. So I'm gonna have to go back and undo a bunch here because I do not believe I can just easily undo that myself. So I'm gonna unfortunately have to delete the idle finish. So just Control Z all the way back until I don't have the constraint. So no constraints yet. And what I can do here is in this base skeleton, we can also make sure to rename this as a different file so we're not saving over it. FFIX, bone constraints. And then name it with a dummy. Just clarity. So what we're gonna have to do here is on this bone, we're gonna go ahead and hide the animation skeleton for now, or this collection for now. Here, we are going to edit mode, and also shift click here to see all the bones. We're going to hit Shift A, and see how it created another bone here? This bone right here. What we're gonna have to do here is click on bone 000, and then this new bone, and we're gonna parent. Oh, it's gotta be out of there. We're gonna parent it. Make sure it's in the collection. I did not parent that correctly. Click on that one, then you click on this. Parent. Or am I doing this backwards? I'm messing up here. Okay, this is good to basically mess around with and learn. As you can see, I am not a pro in Blender either. Oh, why is it not allowing me to? So we just go into the actual here, object. Yeah, parent. There you are, parent. Object. Where's the parent? Bone. Bone relative. It is not liking me doing this. Bone 0, bone 0. Armature, parent, make, keep offset. There you go. So you have to be in edit mode. You click on, remember, the bone 0 first, and then the bone. Here, so this is going to be the dummy bone. But now, because we have to do this dummy bone, we're going to have to rename the bones again. So you just click it again, just to make sure everything's named properly. You're going to see a bunch of weird stuff. Just click it again. There you go. So now the dummy bone is now the new root bone. And what that means now is, now let's go ahead and undo this collection here. So back to seeing this armature, go back into object mode. So object mode, click on the armature again. And when you set the bone constraints, this is with the dummy bone. So set bone constraints. So this bone -1, it's basically taking an account for the bone 0, and it's going to ignore first bone 0 and treat bone 001 as its actual bone 0. So again, if I go back into the animation skeleton, I can still click the different animation real quick. Back to idle 2, back to here. Back to idle. Just click on any different animation just to get it working again. Where did I get this again? Got this all backwards. Go ahead and undo this here. So we have the dummy bone. We did the bone constraints. Usually it's all about just how I clicked it and just clicked the wrong one. That's typically what I always do. I just happen to click the wrong thing. Okay, you may have noticed a little cutoff because that's the dummy bone issue we were having in the end. Again, if you didn't have any dummy bone issues, if your animation was working just fine, then you're good. You just continue as you are. If you end up having a issue where even though you followed stuff, your character's feet are still off the ground slightly, then you just have to grab that empty on the outliner, and then when you click on it, you just move it down again further. Because now that it has its constraints, you should see it moving the model slightly down too. So we're gonna go ahead and whenever you have to create a dummy bone, instead of creating a separate file itself, I already created a cloud dummy bone constraints file that was just off of the model only. So just opened the model only file again and reverted him back to, so in X -1. So I brought him back upwards. And I also right clicked here and just changed the color just for understanding. So before we append the other model, we need to add a new bone, a dummy bone. So what you got to do is in object mode, after you select your armature, you press tab to edit, and then you just shift A. You should see a bone gets created here, right here. It's not parented to anything, but so what you got to do is the same thing as we did before. You click on the first bone that you want to be the child, and then you click on the one that you want to be the parent, control click. Make sure you're not highlighting every bone, just control click. And then armature, parent, make, keep offset. Okay, now it shows that this bone is the parent of this. This is going to be the dummy bone, the new root bone. So we're going to rename the bones. Might have to click it a couple times because having to readjust it. But now it's back to normal. And now that we have the bones renamed already, now we can should be able to append the other model. So we're going to go ahead and file, append. Remember, this was the existing animations one. And we're going to go into collection, animation collection. Change this one to red just so I can see things a lot easier. Also delete the mesh. Just right click delete or X to delete. And then you're going to go back and you're also going to go into the Blender file and delete the extra action again. Here. Let's do this part again because this part was afterwards. So you just delete all the action. There should only be one action in there. I redid the file here. Okay. So you just delete those, and then now you go back and append again. Go back into the actions, highlight them all, append. Okay. So now we should still be able to, if I hide this collection real quick, should still be able to click pose mode, object mode, be able to click on any of the animations, and it should be able to play. If I did the whole renaming the bone with the collection already added, the rename bone my script seems to probably adjust something in here that kind of breaks it. So we're gonna leave it like that and grab the animation that we wanted. That was idle 2. See all the keyframes it has here. This is just the one I'm going with. Press space. Okay, so that's what I'm going with. But of course, just like before, in object mode, typically in object mode, make sure you are at the very first frame. You can use the up and down arrows to get to the very last keyframe. Go down all the way there. Scale 3.6. And keyframe at scale specifically. Then back at the very last frame, scale 3.6, scale. Oh, I think it's because it still has that one keyframe. Where was it at? But it shows it all individually in a time strip. Here, dope sheet. I believe it is. Yeah, so this one right here. So delete that keyframe. There we go. So you can see how sometimes there's a keyframe that just decides it wants to be attaching it. You can tell whenever I was scrubbing through it very slowly how it did a jut. jumps here. So I just deleted that keyframe. Okay, so now that we have that there, that frame has been deleted. We can also unhide this collection again. And just like before, we're going to create the empty. So back in here under this collection, Shift A, empty, cube, make it a little smaller. You can keep the same size, it doesn't matter. You can also apply that scale, Control A and apply. Animation empty. And just before, child first, and who you want to be the parent. And over here, you can hit Control P. Okay. Now that it's there, we can then decide to use movement. So we're going to use again 1 on the numpad, and we're going to go ahead and hide this mesh. You can hide it with H as well, and Alt H to bring it back. And I'm also going to use wireframe. This allows me, if you hold Z and go to wireframe, allows me to see a little bit better. Now I'm already highlighting here, or the empty. Remember, when I move this empty, it'll move it down. I just get it as close as we possibly can. Okay. Back to the solid view. All right, you can Alt H and hide that. And this again. All right, and now because we have the dummy bone, we have to make sure we collect this bone -1, and then in the object mode, make sure you're selecting again the base collections. Shift click here. There you go. You want to click the base skeleton, and then you want to hit set bone constraints, because what that bone -1 is, it's accounting for that extra dummy bone you have, and that's what the point of that was for. Now, if you see that his character's still kind of off the ground, so even if I go back to the animation skeleton here and play the animation, it works, but he's kind of off the ground here. So whenever you go put him in the model viewer, you see he's not going to be on the ground. So just like before, you can click on the empty and go press 1, and then Control G, move the empty down. His feet look like they're lined up perfectly like you want it to be. You can also just bring it back to the default stance and then move them first. You can also use the arrow keys to get a more accurate one there. And that looks a lot better. So now you have the animation on the ground. So with that, now we can do the animation bake and see if that finally gets rid of the issue that we were having. So again, here's the animation piece. About the on idle 2, should have made it unfinished, but okay. This one doesn't have anything created yet, which is perfect. We're going to go ahead and name it on a cloud 0 battle idle finished, and then apply the negative root scale. And then before you even apply it, got to make sure when you're clicked on base skeleton here, go into pose mode, Control Tab, or up here, highlight them all with A, pose, animation, bake action, and remember, same thing, everything except those 2 clears, bake. Okay. Now the model shows that it's working here. And this is on the base skeleton, so now we can export that selected animation. And get that moved over. 55.6. Also, go ahead and replace this one again, because this was that one. That's fine, I had that named wrong anyways. Alright. And now we should hopefully have no more of that whole body shaking issue. So we're going to test that in the model viewer. Well, that's not what I expected. What happened there? Okay, so you see this issue here. That's because I made a mistake also, because if you're gonna have to create a dummy bone, you are also going to have to redo the model view one. This part is fine. This should be working just fine. Should be. If I'm looking here and looking under the ground, hopefully it should be working fine. So what we're gonna do here is close this. Or actually, we don't even have to close this. We are going to go ahead and open up another Blender file real quick. We're going to go into open. We're going to go back to the model only. And we're just going to revert it real quick here. And we're going to do the same thing just to this base skeleton. Again, this is if you need the dummy bone. Now this is going to be quick. It's the same piece. You just go into edit mode, Shift A, create that bone. Then go ahead and click child, then on the parent, armature, parent, make, oops, parent, make, keep offset, and then do the whole renaming thing again. Okay, now that it's renamed, back into object mode, highlight it all, and we're going to go ahead and do an export again on it, just like we did before. Make sure that, again, the leaf bones is not added. Rename this to export FFIX. We are going to move this file real quick. We're going to move this file real quick. I'm going to pause that in a moment there. So we're going to go ahead, like I said, we exported that back now to dummy bone. So we're going to go ahead and make sure we grab that new one and replace it with this one, because that does still use the skeleton. So see here, back. There we go. Now you can see right here, of course, it is using that one that is actually the root bone. It's down here, but the root bone 0 that Final Fantasy 9 doesn't like to move is that dummy bone there. Maybe you can still use to move stuff around. And the reason why this, of course, the T-pose is going to look weird there because it's messed up. The reason why this is, of course, looking kind of weird and stretched out is because, again, we made this without the dummy bone. So if you made a custom animation with that, you just have to remake the dummy bone version of it, which is simple because that's just one keyframe. But of course, if you use an existing animations, but there we go. So now with that out of the way, we can go into actually just adding that part as a playtest into the idle animation. Meaning, I'm going to close this. I'm going to go back into Hades Workshop here, and just the stand, which is stand is just the idle. We're going to probably idle. I'm going to go ahead here, save that. Should still export it. Demonstration mod. All right. Just remember that the model only is a skeleton. So if you're making adjustments to anything of the skeleton, you have to come back to this one and do the same adjustments. Let's see, hopefully everything will work out. Oh, I opened up model viewer on accident. That is a force of habit. The amount of testing I've been doing is just a force of habit on that point. Of course, if you see any of the random banter or anything like this, feel free to skip through it. I'm just trying to make sure even I make the mistakes, and I don't want to cut out every mistake I make and make it perfect, because making mistakes is what happens at times. Okay, go to play. We're going to go into continue. All right, let me see. If we change that battle idle, he should hopefully show up correctly. Okay. Okay, so that's another thing, is that we have to make sure we adjust the weapon bone as well, because it's going to be +1 as well. So if I go back into here, just to make sure also everything works with that animation in case we have to readjust anything more, but we should have had everything all set up. Model viewer. Okay, so we're gonna add the weapon here to his hand, which is 11, as you see it counting up here. 11 is now not in the right hand. It's 12 now because of the bone, the dummy bone we added. Now just replace it back with the correct weapon. Now you notice that the weapon is not angled correctly. That is most likely due to the fact that we did not actually do the rotation first. So let's try to fix that real quick. It's the whole point of testing. Now that we have this model working correctly, and we got it with its dummy bone, we'll make sure we save that as same number, but model only dummy bone. Okay. And now we're going to go ahead and open back up to the dummy bone constraints. Should be able to do the exact same thing with the base skeleton. Get it back into rest position here, and get this out of in object mode. Even though we have the weapon set correctly, oh, the wrong one here. So it looks like what we may have to do here is do the same thing, rest position, and then edit this bone. If you remember, it's the same bone. You can always click on the viewport display to see the bone names again on here. I'm going to rotate that by negative. Nope, it was 90. Rotate 90. Rotate this one, negative 90. Okay. All right, and we'll go ahead and take that out, go back to pose position. Put this one back into pose position. And actually, just to make sure these bones don't switch over again. I move this bone. Here. Should be the same constraints. And then let's try and do the animation again. Not sure this will probably work. This will require some finagling. But we're going to go back and delete the finished one that we just did. Don't worry about the missing actions right now. Go back into here. I'm going to create the new on main crowd 0 battle middle finish. And do the same thing like before. Pose mode, pose, and then we're going to go into animation, bake action, with the same options. Bake that action. There it goes. We're going to go ahead and export that in the downloads here. Same thing like before. Bake that in there, FFIX. And in here, just take the same name, overwrite it. Okay, now let's go back into here again. Let's see if make sure everything kind of popped up properly. It may not, but like I said, sometimes it may take a little finagling, just messing around with different pieces. I'm still on the piece myself, but you're basically getting the most of it. And there you go. Actually, yeah, just try to rotate the model. I just had to rotate the animation model. So now it looks like it's focused. So now whenever you do your animations, as long as you edited that animation armature, the animation one in the rest position, here, edit, there you go, in edit mode, and make sure that they're the same as the other model. The animation should hopefully follow. And now if we go one more time, we're going to do final test. Final test being that we're just going to have it in battle, just to make sure everything's good, nothing's odd popping out of the way. Of course, as you know, there won't be any other animations. You'll have to go through each animation and kind of repeat some of those steps. So. Oh, that is still me. You have to make sure that you replace the bone number. So it's bone 12 instead of 11. It's +1. Save that mod, overwrite it, save the regular mod too. Now, as this is loading, the other thing is sometimes if you have existing animations that have full attack range, you'll notice that there's a attack ready, a ready attack, attack run, attack 1, attack 2, jump back 1, jump back 2. That's like the full attack sequence. You may have to cut your animations into a couple pieces or learn how to create them into one long animation that works. And there you go. There's the model. It's working properly. It looks like the shading's properly, and of course still can't fix the diamond yet. But that's it. And then hopefully that has told everybody what they need to know. And of course, you're just going to get that crappy T-bows or broken T-bows because it just glitches. And yeah, that will be the end of that, basically part of that tutorial. I'll probably add a little last bit after this just for showing you you're creating a little bit more, or maybe just sharing the little pieces of resources. But other than that, I hope everybody enjoyed that. Again, my name is Warped Edge. Again, my first video tutorial doing this for you guys, so if you guys have any feedback, I felt like leaving in, again, all the other pieces was, even the mistakes, and kind of editing slightly over them is kind of needed, because again, it shows that sometimes you have mistakes like, oh, I have the same mistake as me, you can go and follow that. I am sorry if any part of it isn't that coherent, but of course, always welcome feedback on it. Other than that, thank you guys all, and I hope you have a great day. Okay, so this is going to be more of a kind of bonus bits at the end to show you some other things. If you could see here where Steiner is, I'm going to do a potion real quick just so he's in the same position. You can see kind of how fast Steiner breathes compared to the Cloud. You could keep it in the 60 FPS that we basically had, but I'm going to show a way of speeding it up. I'm going to go ahead and close this out right now, and we're going to go into the animation file. So go here. I changed both of them just because right now it's going to go off both just the way it is, but the way I have it really set up. Now this one is showing the 30 FPS one. So that is not the right one here. 1 second. I thought I had it exported as 60. So we're going to go ahead and export the animation again. All right. I also want to show that you see the size of the file right here, 679.6 kilobytes. So that's due to the way that it's formatted. I do have up in here how I run Python in my little script right here, the animation convert. Basically, and again, so you run Python command, and you run the animation convert.py, and then you just give it the file name. What that does is it'll just redo the file, and you see it's half the size now. This just shows you like how much it is. And now it looks a lot more unreadable, but this is the part that you don't really need to read this unless you were trying to do something specific with it and edit something more. But that's how it looks right now. So we're going to move this into both this file, because of the way I have the model viewer. It's going to pick up both at the moment. And I'm going to go ahead and put it in here. Overwrite. So now, to double check the speed one more time because I had the wrong one. All right. All right, as we are in the game, I'm gonna get back to the battle real quick. Okay, so you can see how slow he is moving right now. And of course I had accidentally exported it with the wrong hand, like rotation again, that's my fault, but that's already covered before. So I forgot to reorientate it when I exported this one specifically. So that's fine. So just to show the animation difference, we're gonna go into here. And to speed it up, funny enough, you actually have to decrease the frames. So I'm gonna do hack just to see what it looks like here. And this is the other one, FFIX. So we're gonna put it in half. Of course, in model viewer, it'll look a lot faster too, like much faster. But we wanted to kind of get the same results that we had before. So typically, that's why you do it in 60 FPS, so you can cut it in half with getting to the typical 30 FPS that the animations usually go off of. So now if I go into here, now that looks like a lot faster of an animation that just looks a little bit cleaner. So typically, most of the animations, if not all, if you do in 60 FPS, then you just cut them in half. Because if you started at 30 FPS, and unfortunately, it looks like the old one, even though you decrease the FPS from the export. So it's like think of it as a setting the baseline and then cutting it in half to what you actually want it to be. Fortunately, that's just what you got to do. So that's that part. I did have another bonus piece to talk about here, but I will do that in the next little section. So I'll stop recording for this piece. Okay, so what you're seeing here right now, I forgot to apparently unmute my mic during this recording, but what I'm essentially showing is whenever you are scaling an animation, sometimes even if you scale the beginning and the end of the animation, it still does that shrinking method during the play. And sometimes it could be, if you zoom in on the track at the bottom, you can see that there are multiple keyframes. Typically, it is the second to last keyframe I've noticed that I just need to click on and delete, and then it'll play. If it doesn't fix it by then, it's maybe it's the two before. Like just delete, just don't delete the last keyframe, but delete the previous keyframes. When you do that, you'll be able to actually see the animation play properly. I also wanted to throw in a bonus thing that's not shown here, which is when it comes to your model like weapon placement, just make sure that you are editing that weapon placement each time. I haven't found a complete proper way to do it yet. Maybe it just takes a little more practice. Maybe I just needed to edit the beginning models with the animation, the unchanged, the modified. Needed to make sure I changed it there, because then it would have probably been proper the entire time. So just want to throw that tidbit in there, and I'll let it just kind of continue. Okay, so I also forgot to do audio in this piece of the section as well. My fault. Same thing with this one is basically just adjusting the model. Two things here is one is that I had to, as you can see, the model is in the ground with some of the animations. I just needed to, the same thing as you do with the scale, when you click the armature and you scaled it, this time you're just using G and then Z for the up and down part, even though typically that's Y. But you'll be using Z to move it up and place it to the correct spot. Remember, using the numpad 1 to orientate it properly, and then you'll keyframe that location. So when you're doing the scale and location, you can do both. You can scale it and then get it to the right location, and then when you press up that key menu, just choose location and scale. This can be worked with rotation stuff too if you're working with that. The other part I wanted to be able to add is that certain animations may still do some weird things. You may have to adjust frames in between as well. I had to do that with this one just particularly. If you notice that even though you set your character to the world origin 0, and they are somehow floating or in the ground somehow in game, you can either adjust the model again, even though it may look like it's in the ground in Blender, you're adjusting it to basically be ready inside the game. So sometimes some animations were doing that. Or you can go into the animation file, look at the 0 bone root, and then just change whatever it's Y, not Z for this one, but Y value to a negative. At least that's what I had to do with mine. Or you just got to play around with it, reload it, and then see. But yeah, I just wanted to add that bit in there as well.